Hi there. Welcome to the Positive Rant. Thank you, Dennis McNeil, for framing my angry tirades that way. I like that. I love our president. I am angry. So if this shutdown is getting to you, don't get depressed. Depression is anger turned inward. So I've decided to become glad for my anger, and my anger gives me energy. I listened to Dave Morrison of Blue Collar Logic. You know, he had that great video about how we needed to get back to work, which many of you pointed out to me in the links to my comments on my video. But I listened to his April 17th, and oh my God, he sounded depressed. Talked about his bad knees. It was, I thought, oh, it's getting to him. This is not good. But things are turning around. I think signs are hopeful. And another one that I like to listen to is Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles on the Daily Wire. He's become one of my favorites in terms of listening to on YouTube. And he got me thinking about civil disobedience, which I'll talk about. I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let me talk about our wonderful, wonderful president. I watched him on Friday, the whole thing. Now, remember, one of the ways you can tell someone who's Democratic or listens to the mainstream media is they keep talking about testing. And I had two Democratic people mention that to me, and I fought back. I said, oh, that's just a left-wing talking point. And they got a little defensive, it's like, what's this about testing? What does that matter? I mean, that's a code word. So, Andrew Cuomo, as you know, governor of New York, said something about we need more testing from the President Trump, from the federal government. So, oh my God. Remember, politics. I'm fascinated by politics. I'm a political junkie. I've been in politics in one form or another since 1989. And I've learned a lot from observing politicians, hanging around with politicians, serving in Washington, D.C., working on campaigns. For those of you who don't know my background. So watch what President Trump, think about what he did on Friday. So he sent back a reprimand, if you will, to Andrew Cuomo in a tweet, something like, hey, quit talking and get to work, because it made him angry. But during the press conference, he left for a while. He said, I'll be back to answer questions. But then he had Anthony Fauci, he had Deborah Birx, and he had the Admiral, who's getting all the equipment, testing equipment out, talk in great detail about what they're doing about the testing. Oh yeah, and also Mike Pence talked about it too and said, no, we're getting for the phase 1, there's enough testing. There's plenty of tests. But see, President Trump knows to play their game, to use their own weapons against them. It's kind of like, you notice he's very science oriented. Because they're saying, oh, he's not listening to the science. Well, then he lets the scientists speak, but he makes sure he knows what they're going to say. He's no dummy. So they covered in great detail the testing issue. So anything you would ask after that would just make you look like an idiot. There's clearly enough testing for the phase 1 of this reopening. So I loved watching that. Remember, well, I shouldn't say remember, but my observation is, with politics, don't take everything at face value. I've had some of you say in the comments, like, well, gee, I hope the president does this, or you have to understand the limitations of people in the public eye, what they're under. I mean, I experienced that when I was at the Pentagon. I had to testify in Congress, sort of in favor of a satellite system, the Milstar system. I did not like this system, but I couldn't come out directly against it. So I just talked about, it was very highly secure, but it didn't have a lot of capacity. And the Congress people asked me, they were shocked. And I just very factually said that. But I had to be very careful. There were spies reporting on me because they sent a report to the person I reported to. But remember, I was a political appointee, as was he. So that gave me some protection. But he was Assistant Secretary of Defense for Command, Control, Communications, and Intelligence. I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Command, Control, and Communications. But, I mean, you can't just say, you have to figure out a way how to do that. So I watch President Trump, and I honestly have never seen someone as skillful as he is. It is such a pleasure. So all the things he says about, we would have had over 2 million deaths if we didn't do this in the shutdown. That doesn't necessarily mean he believes that. But that's what he was told by the experts with their models. And so he goes on that assumption, or acts like he goes on that assumption. And then what are they going to do when these experts that everybody says he should be listening to tell the press in extensive detail? Actually, it was quite interesting about what the testing involves, how you're getting it out, the phase 1. So it wasn't the president that had to do that. And then he came back in and asked questions, and I noticed the questions at that point were kind of tame. And I listened to him today answering the questions, and now it was about, aren't people violating the guidelines when they're protesting? And he never directly addressed that. He did talk about the Second Amendment issue in Virginia, and that some of the governors were doing more than they needed to. But he sidestepped the question because they were so trying to get him. Well, it's terrible. People are protesting and then they're violating the guidelines. I mean, look at what happened to Trish Regan. She's on the Fox Business News, or had been, and I watched her sporadically. But she just said that this coronavirus, apparently, I didn't listen to the opinion piece. The coronavirus is being hyped up to attack President Trump. And because of that, she was let go by Fox News. And so you have to be very careful. So watch, my favorite right now is Laura Ingraham. I love that woman. She is so sharp. She's so good. And she's talking a lot about the medical issues related to the coronavirus. I mean, that's where I first heard about hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. And then also, she has doctors on. But she's talking about the coronavirus is, terrible. The deaths are terrible. Every death is horrible. She says that every time. But she also talks about the other problems that come around. So she's very clever. She's smart. She knows what she has to do here. Tucker Carlson is also very good. But Tucker Carlson was always more fearful about this. But he freely admits that, the models were wrong. So he's safe. So those people, when you listen to them, understand what they have to do. Understand what's behind it. I'm saying understand, like you got to understand, listen to me. But I encourage you to understand that they're in a very difficult situation because in today's media world, you can get shut down. And the people running Fox News, so for example, they have to be very careful about what they say about climate change. So they kind of don't address it. The only way they address it, when we're back to that topic again, is to just talk about the economic hardships that it would provide. They don't really get into the science behind the climate change models, which is I'm really hoping that many, many people, when we look back at this, okay, it's the same thing, except these models go much further out. And one of the things I think is interesting is this whole idea of goalposts changing. I first heard that from Tucker Carlson, which I thought was a very good point, and Laura Ingraham now talks about it. See, first, the whole idea of this shutdown was that there was just going to be a slew of these cases going to overwhelm the hospitals. Well, that's not what they're talking about now. Now they're just talking about stopping the spread of the virus. The hospitals are not overwhelmed. Not at all. They're letting people off, furlough nurses. And people are getting tired of this. They're even, I mean, in Los Angeles and California, you still have a lot of people think, oh, we saved each other. I mean, because Gavin Newsom shut everything down. Ugh. So for a lot of people, he's popular. But people like to have their elective surgeries. People like to be able to go to their doctor and get things done. You don't think that's going to start bothering people? I mean, at first it's sort of kind of a lark, you know, because a lot of these people are wealthy, they live in this beautiful area, and they do whatever they want to do. It's no real hardship for them, but it will be when they can't get their procedures. They can't get their elective stuff done. They're going to start, okay, it's enough. It's enough. And I think that that's growing. I think it's growing that this is enough already. And one of the nice things is as other states open up, there's going to be a lot of pressure. I mean, and Laura Ingraham brings this up a lot, but it's amazing that in this state of 40 million people, we've had less than 1,000 deaths from coronavirus. I mean, the insanity of this is driving, I mean, you know, I'm big on health issues. This is like a one-dimensional look at health. There are so many aspects to health. So many aspects. And to just look at this one-dimensional characteristic is nuts. I admit when I listen to Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, you know, going over their graphs, and these are the coronavirus deaths. I understand how President Trump has to do that. But I feel angry as I watch them. They are completely disassociated from the pain inflicted on people's lives. It's like, oh, it's a number. Let's get this number down. It's like, do you understand what's happened to people? And I love Laura Ingraham for talking a lot about this. The people who are losing their livelihoods, losing their business. This is not about just a coronavirus death. And she had Phil McGraw on, you know, Dr. Phil. And he hasn't been on Fox, I don't think, but it was clear that he watched Laura Ingraham. He said, keep doing what you're doing. But he talked about the psychological effects, how damaging this is, and also gave practical things that people can do during this shutdown to keep up their health and happiness, keep their habits. But we can't just, every time there's a new virus, shut everything down. I hope what we learn from this is we cannot do this. So I just rewatched, because Robert, my stepson and friend, came over yesterday. And I said, Robert, if you haven't seen this 2018 flu pandemic American Experience PBS show, let's watch it together. And so we watched it. And it was shocking. And I was glad that I watched it again, because that was really, really serious. So when I think about, okay, what's something positive that can come out of this? if we have a serious, when I say serious pandemic, not by the spread of it, but if we have a serious pandemic of people, dying, because they talked, they were interviewing people, and I guess they must have interviewed them in the 1990s, because this is 1918, which, by the way, it's kind of cute with President Trump. I'm sort of a stickler for accuracy. He keeps saying 1917. The first case was in March 1918 in Fort Riley, Kansas. So it's called the Spanish flu, but it actually started at an Army base. And then we took it over to Europe and then brought it back. But it was gone by the end of 1918. But it never happened in 1917. I just put that out there, For some reason, he's got 1917 on the brain. It's kind of cute. He's so smart in other areas. But he's got that one wrong. So, I like how one of my friends, I saw her, and she said, enough already. She was wearing a mask for a month because she had had heart surgery, and so her cardiologist said, you got to be very careful. And she said, I'm done. So she gave me a hug. And I just think we have to say that. Enough already. Are we wimps? Are we so afraid of getting sick? One of the things, and this is why I have democratic derangement syndrome. I used to say, like, for example, ex-smokers are like the worst because they hate cigarette smoke. I'd heard that. I never smoked. But having been a very strong Democrat for many years, I'm like really, really not liking Democrats. So first of all, if we have testing and you have a fever, I should be able to call up my doctor, get a prescription for hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, and take it right away. If you get the test and you know that you've got it, do it. Don't wait till you get, right now you have to kind of think. You have to wait till you get to a hospital. Well, the thing that kind of bothers me about this coronavirus is apparently once it gets really bad, you might do permanent damage to your lungs. And I care about that. I think in the early stages it doesn't do any damage to your lungs, but if you get so bad that you have to go to the hospital, I think you're damaging your lungs permanently. So take that right away. And then if you have to go to the hospital, apparently this remdesivir, the viral antiviral that was developed to fight Ebola, that's for like critically ill patients. But why is everybody talking about ventilators? I've heard it in several different places. This is disgusting to me. 80% of the people that they put on a ventilator, 80% people die. That they put on for the coronavirus. Why the hell are we doing this? Excuse me. Why the heck are we doing this? Putting people on ventilators. That's just, we better figure this out because there's something going on with the lungs. Apparently the ventilator pushes the air in. Anyway, there's so many videos on this and so much information. I don't need to repeat it here, but I find that disgusting. So I want to be able to get the drugs, take it right away, get over it. But why are the Democrats fighting this? It's almost like they want people to get sick and die. I don't get this. Okay? You don't have to take it. Don't take it if you don't want it. Nobody's forcing you. Okay? But why, if other people want to take it, why not let them take it? It's insane. Let's just deal with this. Don't try to, we gotta test everybody. No, it's a coronavirus. We know what to do now. So let's do it. And apparently that Stanford study just came out. Turns out a lot of people have antibodies. It's not as deadly, but for some people it is. And I don't know who that is, but being a health conscious person, I would want to take the hydroxychloroquine and the zithromycin, that Z-Pack, right away if I was tested positive. So it would never get that deep in my lungs. And I don't think it would, but if it did, I'd want to take care of it. Okay, so I have a couple shortcuts now in evaluating people. A long time ago, I used to say, if somebody looks into the climate change issue, you know, really investigates it, because if you were someone who believed in science or whatever, then naturally you believed what the scientists said. You thought you thought global warming was a problem, blah, blah, blah. But if you then looked into it and you still thought that, to me that was a litmus test. You're not very bright. Because if you could look at that evidence, you're just not very smart. And a lot of people don't have the time. That's why I noticed that, like, biologists, people who were not really involved, because everybody who is involved in the issue, at least during in conversations I've had with people at Caltech, because I'm on 3 chairs councils, and I would get in discussions with people. The people who knew more, they all knew that the models were bad. So there's one guy there, Tapio Schneider, who's trying to model the effects of clouds, but it's that linear, chaotic, nonlinear, chaotic, coupled system, even with that. Because they're treating CO2 like it's the only variable, and it's not. So anyway, I have another one. Right now, except in Beverly Hills, there's no requirement to wear a face mask when you're outdoors exercising. It's only at the grocery store. So if I see somebody outdoors exercising and they're far away from people and they have a face mask, they're wimps. They're fearful wimps. Yeah, that's my judgment. I mean, think about it. Because one of the things that I think people don't understand is there's a thing called viral load. So if you are hugely, like, let's say you live with somebody who had the coronavirus, or you worked in a hospital where you're around a lot of coronavirus patients, if you get a lot of the virus, that's very different than walking outdoors and from 6 feet away, you get 1 droplet. I mean, I actually am concerned about what we're doing to people with that. People are, what a way to live your life, and you're fearful of the wrong things. There are things to be fearful. When I get in a car, I put my seatbelt on. I lock the door because somebody could just open the door and do something. I'm just remembering, I was driving to visit my niece, Lindsay, and I stopped at the restaurant stop, and I unlocked my door, and then I was texting her, and some woman just opened the door to my car on the passenger side. Obviously, she thought it was another car. Now, what did I do? My brain just reacted. I had no conscious thought, but I just started screaming. I went, it was so funny. I just like, get out of my car. Anyway, I laughed about that the whole rest of the drive, just thinking about, I thought, that's how I reacted. But always lock your door. But anyway, here's, Michael Knowles had a thing about civil disobedience. And I thought, and this actually made me feel better, having this plan. I don't think it's ever going to happen because things are loosening up just a little bit around here. So I don't think that they'll now require mass outdoors in Pacific Palisades and Santa Monica. In fact, I've seen, when I went out, I've seen less people wearing masks now. I think people are starting to relax. The word's getting out. I even saw a headline. I don't read it but I saw the headline from from the LA Times saying it's not as bad as people thought it was going to be. So the word is getting out. But if they did, I thought, I'm not wearing a face mask when I'm exercising outdoors. I felt that if I'm staying away from people, you have no right to force me to wear a face mask. So I thought, okay, I could afford to pay the fine. But then I thought, well, Santa Monica, and wherever, Los Angeles, I don't want them collecting money from me, because this could be a moneymaker, find people, take their money. So then I thought, well, wait a minute, I don't run with my phone or my wallet. So if a cop stopped me, what could I do? So I think I never have to do this, but I got to tell you, coming up with this plan made me feel good. I felt better. So I thought, well, I have a friend who spells my name D-E-B-R-A, even though it's D-E-B-O-R-A-H. I thought, I'll be Deborah, D-E-B-R-A, because, in case I saw somebody and they said, hey, hi, Deborah, I don't want to be giving the wrong name to a cop or while I'm getting excited. So I said, I'll be D-E-B-R-A. And then one of my favorite families is my niece's family with her 3 children, her sweet husband. I'll be Cano, Deborah Cano, because I'm part of that family. So C-A-N-O. And then I thought, well, what would be my address? So I looked up places to rent in Santa Monica where nobody's living. And I memorized a Santa Monica address. And so that's what I'll do. And I just felt good. Because I felt really good. I don't know if you've all heard of Run, Forrest Run, but I loved it. I retweeted it. Devin Nunes, oh man, he's my favorite person in Congress. Favorite person. He's also Lindsay's congressperson because he's in Central California. And that's my niece, Lindsay Cano. Anyway, he tweeted. He tweeted it, Run, Forrest, Run. Somebody took a video, I guess from an apartment of a guy, and he was running along the beach, and then a cop is in a face mask, kind of runs up to him, and might have said something to me. It looks like he got close, and then the guy just outran him. And so there's signs popping up, Run, Forrest, Run. I love that. It's like, that is just too much. People are okay with following reasonable stuff, but when it just becomes petty tyranny, we got to fight back. I mean, this is just wrong. And you can certainly see that in Michigan with that horrible governor, Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, just petty stuff. So she ignited a lot of rebellion. So when some of these Democratic governors, it's just too much. People are protesting. And also people want to get back to work. One of the things I really liked, I get inspired by people too, Katie Pavlich. She writes for Town Hall Daily, and I get their daily newsletter, which is nice because kind of in the morning I'm looking at my email. It's a quick summary in a very always pro-Trump way, so I don't get angry. But it tells you the news of the day before. And she's my favorite. And so she sometimes is a guest on The Five and on other shows. And she's young, a young conservative. But I hope she has her own show someday because she's really good. I like her a lot. But she said something that really struck a chord with me. She said, let people decide. Okay? We know the virus is out there. We know what we need to do. But let us decide ourselves. So everybody has certain risk tolerances. So if you're worried about being around other people, then don't be around other people. If you want to meet with your friends and wear a mask, then do it. But let the rest of us decide. Okay? We're ready to do that. And that brings me to another thing. And I haven't heard anybody say, oh, we've got to protect all our vulnerable populations. That drives me up a wall. No, we do not ask them if they want to be protected. I am horrified to the core of my being, having taken care of my husband and held him in his arms, and he kissed my arms while I'm holding him and told me he loved me before he died. The thought of if he'd been in a rest home, I'll start crying if I talk about this, and I could not see him, when he got, at the end of his life, he got kind of panicky if I wasn't around, like I was his mommy or something, and he couldn't like process why I wasn't there. Let them decide. In the same way they do with DNR, they'll ask you, do you want to be, I remember they did this for my mother, they asked her, you know, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want this? Do you want that? Whatever. Well, ask the people in these homes, we recommend against having visitors because there's a virus going around. So, do you want that? But don't go protecting them. Like, now, if they have cognitive difficulties, then their closest relative or whoever's taking care of them should decide. But don't just say that we're going to protect them as if the only thing that matters to someone at the end of their life is whether they're going to live another day or two. Because that is not what it is. You want to die. Don't protect vulnerable populations. Let them protect themselves or their closest loved ones. Let them decide. But it's not up to the government, or don't take that away from people. Give them that autonomy. Explain to them what's going on if they have full cognitive capability, and say, do you want to do that? But don't just say, no visitors. I'm horrified. To the core of my being, I am horrified by that. Because again, that's looking at life in one dimension. Like this is the only thing that's out there. This is just crazy, crazy. So I'm mad. I'm mad. Enough already. I also listened to President Trump and Robert, my stepson and friend. We watched it together. We watched him when he had the coronavirus survivors. And he was so good. So I asked Robert, again, because it's interesting to get Robert's perspective, because he's not a natural Trump supporter. Like I said, he's a Democrat. So he was very impressed. And mainly it was how Trump was so interested in each person's story. He put each person at ease. It was just as he went around the table. He asked good questions. He joked around. He was so good, so good. And it was really good to watch that. I almost missed it because, but I'm glad I saw it. It's really wonderful to hear a president. And then finally, okay, here's another thing I'm concerned about in the long-term effects. Let's not put fear in children. I mean, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to mess up people's immune systems? Because remember, when we first learned about germs, there were a lot of people who said, wash your hands, stay clean, don't play in the, don't get germs, don't get germs. Well, we created a real problem in immune systems where they're hypersensitive because they don't get exposed to things. And also you created people like Howard Hughes that, was such a germaphobe, just like crazy germaphobe. That's not healthy. That's not healthy for their immune system. Look at all the people who have autoimmune diseases because their immune system is so sensitive that it attacks the body. So do we want to raise another generation of children that are so afraid like that and so afraid of getting a droplet, a germ? I mean, this coronavirus is not even killing children. So why are we doing this to kids? It's just, nuts. It's nuts. We're just creating these fearful, and of course they do this with the climate issues, teaching them this at school that, oh, the future, the planet, we got to save the planet. These are all invisible, not even real fears, okay? Now the pandemic, the 1918 pandemic, that was really bad. I mean, they were interviewing people who said, all my friends died. And their mothers died, the babies died, neighbors died, the workers in the dad's store all one by one died. I mean, that is when you got to worry, okay? When you have a pandemic like that, I'm all for a shutdown. I'm all for, let's do it. Let's do all the contact tracing. Let's do all that. So that's the only good thing that can come out of this. But we got to stop this nonsense of shutting down the economy every time there's a new virus. And then also, and this is one of my disappointments with Bill Gates and people like that. When that virus started, China is the one that let it loose upon the world, okay? Because they lied and they don't go saying all the things we got to do for the rest of the world, pandemic, you know, because this is a global thing. We shut down everything around the world. So it's not just the Democrats. It's not just the U.S. I mean, look at all these economies. This is going to hurt China. And they're doing this propaganda war. But, oh, my God, China did this. And most of these things come out of China and sometimes out of Africa. But this is where these kinds of weird viruses originate. So let's not forget that. And we need to have a way of immediately locking it down when you find out and do contact tracing. We should never do this again. This is not sustainable. Not going to do it. And then here's another one I want to add. Oh my gosh, I'm at 37 minutes. But let me just try this one more. Okay, people on Fox News, the ones we like, they sometimes have to do this, but we don't have to do it. Quit being on the defensive. It was the same thing I said, like, when they would call people who questioned the models about climate and the projections, oh, you're a climate denier. Never use their language. Don't be defensive. Turn it around, okay? Have a little social scorn. That's what I'm doing now. And I'm seeing it's having good effects. Like, okay, first of all, nobody wants to be a wimp. So it's sort of like, really? I mean, show a little social scorn for that kind of fearfulness. Who wants to be fearful? Don't be fearful. And it's like, really? You're worried about that? Teach people to be tough and resilient. That's what I'm for. Full mental and emotional health. And strength, inner strength. And if you get depressed, that's anger turned inward. Turn it outward where it belongs. I've enjoyed my positive rant. See you next week.